Part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a student and a job hunting agent.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning. May I help you?
Oh, good morning. Is this the Student Job Center?
Oh, yes.
I was wondering if perhaps you could tell me a bit about the job. You know, the hotel recruitment program that offers a range of work at the hotels in the area.
Of course. Take a seat, please. I'll take you through some of what we have on offer.
Thank you so much. Oh, wait a second and I'll get my pen.
Okay. The first job is reception assistant at the Parkview Hotel. The Parkview Hotel has quite an international flavor, so you'll need to speak at least 2 foreign languages.
Sure. I can speak fluent French and Spanish, so that's no problem.
Good. And many guests, of course, travel by car, and you may have to take their vehicles around to the car park. So you will need to have a valid driving license, and you will not be allowed to do the job if you haven't.
Okay, I got that.
Right. And they also say that basic computer skills, such as word processing, would be an advantage, although this isn't a requirement.
Well, I just got my computer skills certificate, so I have no worries about that.
This is quite a varied job, and in fact, I should point out that at certain times of the day, it would involve heavy lifting when guest luggage arrives, or perhaps deliveries come in. Is that okay for you?
Well, it's hard to say at this moment, but I'll bear that in mind when deciding whether to apply for this post.
Sure. Another job is general assistant at the Lakeside Hotel. To be honest, the pay is rather low, but there are compensatory factors. For example, the hotel will provide you with all your meals while you're working, and they will also train you in all the aspects of the job and then issue you with a certificate, which, of course, could be very valuable to you in the future.
Oh, that sounds great.
Now, the third job on offer is catering assistant at Hotel 98's smart new premises. As you know, this hotel is popular with exclusive travelers, and so you'll need to wear the distinctive staff uniform, which you're provided with. Don't consider this job unless you're fairly flexible about when you work, as the hotel will require you to work nights for this job, and you will need to travel to and from the hotel, as it is situated just outside the city.
Well, I'm afraid I can't manage that because of the lectures.
Okay, I get the picture. So, which one will you prefer? Reception assistant at the Parkview Hotel or general assistant at the Lakeside Hotel?
Well, I guess I still couldn't make up my mind right now. Can I have a few days to think about and go back to you later?
That's no problem, and there are a few things I need to clarify with you.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
If you would like to apply for one of these jobs, you will need to follow the recruitment process.
Mom.
So the first thing you'll need to do is to fill in one of these, a personal information form. It's pretty straightforward and should only take you a few minutes. Once you've done that and handed it in, we'll give you a questionnaire about your skills. We then look through the information about you and pass on our recommendations to the relevant hotel.
Yes, sure.
You will then proceed to the next step of the process and attend a general course of training. This is designed to be helpful and realistic, so an important part of the course is role-play activities.
That sounds interesting.
Yes, indeed. And after that, the final step is that you will be contacted by the hotel you're going to work for, and they'll post you a video about themselves and the work involved. Watching this will constitute further and specific training for your job.
Oh yes, I think I'm very clear now. Thank you for helping me.
It's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. You will hear a speech by an official at a meeting of a local football club at the start of a new football season. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Good evening everyone, and thank you for coming to the soccer club meeting. It's good to see so many parents and children here tonight, and I know you're looking forward to a great football season. Now, I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about some changes to the soccer club for the coming season. Now this season, we'll be playing all our matches for both the junior and senior competitions at Kings Park, instead of Royal Park, which was used last season. Now, for meetings, we're going to use the clubhouse in Kings Park, and the next meeting will be held in the clubhouse on the 2nd of July. As usual, we hope to begin the season with a picnic next Saturday at the clubhouse. Please try and come to the picnic, as it's always good fun. At the last week of the season, we usually have a dinner and presentation of prizes to the players, and more information about this will be given to you later in the season. This season, we have more teams than ever. We hope to have 10 teams instead of 5 in the junior competition, and they will play on Saturday mornings beginning at 8:30 a.m. Training sessions will be held in Kings Park on Wednesday afternoons for the juniors, and they will be wearing red shirts again this year. In the senior competition, there will be 4 teams, same as last year, and their games will be played on Saturday afternoons starting at 2:30 it will be at a 2 o'clock start, and the training session for seniors is planned for Sunday afternoons.
Before you hear the rest of the speech, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
Now, I'd like to introduce you to the new committee for the soccer club for this season. Firstly, let me welcome Robert Young, the new president, who will manage the meetings for the next 2 years. Robert's son has been playing football with the club for over 5 years now, and many thanks to Robert for taking on the job of president. Next, we have Gina Costello. She's the treasurer, and she'll collect the fees from you for the season. Please try and give Gina your fees as early as possible in the season, as the club needs the money to buy some new equipment. Then there's David West, who's volunteered to be the club secretary, and one of the many jobs he'll have is to send out newsletters to you regularly. If you have any information that may be useful, please let David know so that it can be included in these newsletters. Also, I'd like to introduce you to Jason Dokic, who is the head coach. For all the new members here tonight, this is the 3rd year that Jason has been with us as head coach, and we're very lucky to have such an experienced coach and former player at our club. He will continue to supervise the teams at training sessions and on match days. Now, before we finish and have some refreshments, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask the new committee?
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a student called Sarah talking to her college tutor about some research she has to do as part of her course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 27.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
So, you want to talk about your research project?
That's right. I want to find out how many people use the Tourist Information Office and what they think of the service they get.
Interesting. Have you written your proposal yet?
No, that's what I wanted to ask you about. What should I include? Someone said I should make a list of my aims first.
Well, I don't know about a list. A statement of aims is the correct term. It's just a quick summary of what you hope to get out of the project.
OK, and should I include other documents I've prepared, like the questionnaire? I'm still working on that.
I can check that later, but I think it's good to prepare an information sheet for participants. It would help you to think about interview methods. It'd be good to see that soon.
Oh, right. And I want the project to have statistical data, not just to be a collection of opinions.
That's good. So that should be clear from the proposal too.
Great. So what else must I include in the proposal? Or are some things optional?
OK. Some things that people normally put in a research proposal don't really apply to you, like any costs involved. That can be really important in some research projects, but as we don't have a budget, it's not something you need to include. Any costs have to come out of your own pocket, I'm afraid.
Yes, I understand that.
But I do need to know your criteria for choosing who to interview. I've got to check that you're using good sampling principles, for example.
Sure. And what about the way I'm going to analyse my findings?
That's not essential at the proposal stage on this project, but if you've got some ideas, include them, because it could save time later.
OK. And do I need to make it clear how the report will be organised?
Oh, I'm going to be giving you a template to use, so there's no need to go into that in the proposal.
Great, thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 28 to 30.
Actually, another thing we could discuss now is making sound recordings of interviews.
Oh, right. Do I have to record them all? I could try to get as many as possible, but it'd be rather expensive.
Yes, don't worry. You only need a few chosen randomly just to give an idea of how the interviews are going. You can send one in each time you update me on your progress.
OK. How often should I do that? I haven't done a timetable for the interviews yet, but they'll be spread over 3 or 4 weeks, with about 200 in total. I reckon on doing 20 a day.
Let me know how you're getting on at the end of each day's interviewing then, whether you've had any problems or not. It can be a lonely job.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And what about the confidentiality of participants? Because that can cause problems.
Well, I'm getting them to sign a consent form. It says that I'll only use the information for my research, that I won't pass it on to anyone else. But that's the only promise I'm making. They have to give me their names and agree to their data being stored on the college computer network.
That sounds good. You won't put names in your report, I know, and the data will all get deleted at the end of the year, but we don't promise any of that.
Sure.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a lecture on the production and trade of rice. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Good morning and welcome to our inaugural lecture on agricultural economics. Today's topic is the world's production and trade of rice. As you are all well aware, rice is the staple ingredient in the diet of much of the world's population. Its importance as a food cereal in the human diet cannot be underestimated. In fact, it's a close second to wheat. About 560 million metric tons of rice is grown each year, compared with about 600 million metric tons of wheat. Coarse grains, such as corn, sorghum, barley, oats, rye, and millet, mostly go into animal feed, which, by the way, is seen by many as a wasteful and inefficient use of fertile land, because around 4 kilos of grain is needed to produce about half a kilo of beef. Some 900 million metric tons of coarse grains are grown annually worldwide, and a further 300 million metric tons of grain is produced for the oil in its seeds. Now, I'll return to the subject of rice production. What do we know about rice production? Well, firstly, rice produces more food energy per hectare than any other cereal grain, and almost as much protein per hectare as wheat. Secondly, the production of rice has more than doubled in the last 40 years. How has this increase in production come about? Mainly as a result of improved field yields. The actual land area planted in rice has only risen by about 30%. As you know, rice is primarily grown in flooded fields, and therefore cultivation area is restricted by the sort of soil and the availability of water. Although rice can be grown on dry land, it is essentially after all a type of grass. The yields and quality in this case are much lower, and other grasses and weeds can easily overtake the rice. As yet there are no herbicides that can selectively kill other grass types without killing the rice. Much of the world's rice is still grown and cultivated by hand, because for mechanized farming, the land must be able to be drained and hold heavy equipment. Of the total rice production, it's no surprise to learn that the greatest proportion by far is grown and consumed in Asia. You will see from the chart that the leading producers of rice are China at around 39%, followed by India with a quarter of the total. Indonesia produces almost 1/10, and other countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Thailand, Japan and Brazil grow another 25, almost 26% of the total. As I said before, most rice is consumed in the countries where it is grown. That means that very little rice is actually traded, and for this reason, the market price is very volatile.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.